Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome, and thank you for staying in your seats. Once again, a reminder, I know you must be sick to death of hearing this, but it really is important, and thank you once again for obeying all the mask regulations and social distancing. It makes a huge difference, and as I said earlier in the day, we are being live streamed, so it doesn't just matter for our own health, it matters for the example we set to others throughout the day. Well, it's a great pleasure to be able to welcome Lieutenant General retired Anatolii Petrenko, who's the Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine. We've heard a little bit about Ukraine this morning from former President Petro Poroshenko, and Ukraine has been one of those countries that has been on our minds over the years, most particularly since 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea and moved into the eastern part of Ukraine, and the death toll from that conflict continues to rise and stands, I believe, Mr. Petrenko, at about 14,000.
Correct.
In April this year, there was quite a significant troop buildup on the border. It didn't ultimately come to nothing. There was still about 80 to 100,000 troops then. We're seeing more troops right now from Russia on the border. A New York Times report on Friday suggested that, and I quote, intelligence officials are warning allies that there is a short window of time to prevent Russia from taking military action in Ukraine. First of all, do you agree with that assessment? And if so, what can the US and its allies do in that short window of time to stop it happening?
Robin, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a privilege of being here, joining the distinguished audience of Halifax Security Forum, discussing security and defense, the situation in the world. And on behalf of the Ministry of Defense, we express our profound appreciation to all the international community for keeping Ukrainian issue very high on the international agenda, standing with us in politics, diplomacy, and economic assistance, and of course, helping out us to build a credible defense force which can protect Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. I will start reflecting, Robin, on your very first question with a typical assessment. And let me just take you very quickly in a sort of artificial tour explaining how the situation looks in Ukraine and around Ukraine, keeping in mind Russian escalatory activities. We still have Russians operating in the east, and they do resource and command significant Russian proxy force, which, despite by all diplomatic efforts, does not comply with all peaceful agreements. They continue exploit intensive sniper fire, extensively employing striking UAVs, broadly utilizing against our personnel various explosive traps, and in fact blatantly violate on a daily basis large caliber artillery, impacting our positions. And despite Normandy and despite Minsk hackers, just this year, Ukraine already lost 62 of our best men and women in uniform, and we already have 248 of Ukrainian soldiers badly wounded. That speaks to the point that those military activities remain being our primary national concern, national security concern. But at the same time, 2021 was special because we all have watched that Russia resorted to unexpected and pretty much in high velocity military reinforcement being deployed in the vicinity of our borders. So as of today, we recognize that in total, we're talking about 112,000 Russian troops, which are stationed either on temporarily occupied part of Ukrainian territory or in a very close vicinity. And speaking about just this number of soldiers, I would also like to make the point that we're also talking about a very significant number of military armament and equipment. We're talking about something like 1,200 main battle tanks. We're talking about 28 ballistic missile complexes. and that is all being supported by more than 1,600 various artillery and multiple launch rocket platforms. In addition to that, we have Russian Black Sea Fleet, which operates sea-based cruise missiles and permanently exercising denial zones in the Black Sea, effectively impacting our economic activities and showcasing Russian military leadership and political leadership readiness to suffocate Ukraine economically if the decision is taken, or maybe impact the whole region as such. In addition, Robert, I believe it is useful to share with the audience the point that the Russian contingent is still present in Transnistria. This is part of Moldova. We also recognize that there is a very significant number of ammunition, impossible to verify and control. And we have all seen also in the past, specifically in 2020, that Russians were being very much active in Azov, that time impacting our seaports and mostly being involved in our economic activities. And I'm talking specifically about Mariupol and Berdyansk. So all in all, the situation is very serious. We are being classically vigilant, and we do exercise necessary precautionary measures to make sure that we prevent, instead of allowing escalatory activities to become full-scale military aggression against Ukraine. We do that by doing twofold mission. We do our military part of business, but at the same time, we reach out politically, at the same time talking to international community, asking you to stay closer and even more robust in terms of security assistance, this way actually preventing Russian political and military leadership from possible escalatory activities. So that's the case as we see it nowadays.
Just to tell everybody in the audience, I want to bring people in as soon as possible. I'm going to ask one more question to Mr. Petrenko right now, but prepare any questions you like, and after I've asked this question, he's answered it, I'll be ready to bring in anybody who wants to ask a question. The question I had arises, and I think this is what has got everybody really concerned, is that the political situation now is different from what it was in April when there was the last build-up. And I mean that in terms of three separate issues. One is it's the post-Afghanistan era, after Kabul, that has tended, according to this view of the world, to have emboldened people like Vladimir Putin. The second thing is we have the departure of Angela Merkel, the longest-standing leader in continental Europe. And perhaps more important than all, there has been a massive rise in gas prices across Europe. And that makes it a lot harder for European nations in particular to impose sanctions should Russia move into Ukraine. Is that something that also makes you very concerned, those three particular regions?
Well, that makes a very complete case for Ukraine as well. We have been suffering from that energy and economic leverage of Russia in the past 20 years or so. We cannot recall any single period during the winter time when Russia has not tried to utilize energy leverage to influence Ukrainian politics and the Ukrainian economy. Nowadays, that appears to be the case for the entire Europe. So they started actually combining posturing of Russian forces in Belarus with the combination of energy influences, and that started making many people worried that with all these activities, we cannot predict any case when things could be pretty much escalatory to many of Eastern European nations. We should also add to this recent rise of migrant activities in Belarus. And I believe that our colleagues in Poland and Lithuania immediately recognized how much hybrid influence that could bring to their countries. So we're talking about combination of factors. And if recently for us it used to be a sort of standard activity, nowadays I believe it's coming to more European nations, and I believe this is even another compelling argument to continue getting closer and to continue exercising our political solidarity, pretty much moving with Ukrainian ambition for European and Euro-Atlantic integration, at the same time understanding that this is a two-way street. And by having Ukraine strong militarily and economically, it's actually another reassurance for the entire Europe to withstand such a combination of potential Russian assertive and escalatory activity. So we do agree, and we do reach out to international community, asking for vigilance and asking for more partnership.
Thank you. The gentleman there, please.
Roland Paris from the University of Ottawa. A couple days ago, Lloyd Austin said, speaking for the United States, we're not exactly sure what Putin is up to in relation to the new buildup. And I'm not sure if I've heard you say yet whether you assess the current buildup to be of a different quality or of a different motivation than the previous instance.
Well, great question. A very simple answer is that we do recognize that the current build-up is atypical. It is very unusual. And if we take into account the complete picture of political dialogue with Russia, in our attempt to do a peacemaking process, we see definitely defiance. We see the appetite for challenge, and we see that combined with unusual, atypical military activities of Russians. What we specifically refer to as atypical, that's the presence of Russian military units in Belarus. We have been preaching about that possibility for a number of years, and we all recognize that just a couple of weeks ago, Russia and Belarus adopted joint military doctrine. The matter of Russian military presence in Belarus is the fact. They started patrolling Belarus borders with air patrols, including Russian bombers, strategic bombers like Tupolev 160 and Tupolev 22. We understand that after alleged exercise for a unified Republic of Russia and Belarus, they left behind a couple of units of Russian long-range air defense C-400, and this is atypical. And if we give you statistics, we are talking about the 3 military districts of Russia who are busy with a generation function for high readiness unit to bring them closer to Ukraine. Is that typical? No, it's not, because we're talking about central military district of Russia, the area behind Ural Mountains currently generating forces to be stationed in the vicinity of Ukraine. Are we talking about something typical like the amount of military hardware within our territories? I'm not sure that I have to ask you for comparisons. All of you are experts, so you can easily extrapolate the numbers to your national systems, or you could compare to what NATO could muster for a conventional operation. But we are talking about thousands and thousands of military equipment, which could be used for escalatory high-end military operations. And let me draw your attention to the fact that Crimea is actually the burning point. They have already 90 sea-based cruise missiles, and the striking range of that is 1,500 kilometers. So the combination of that, the nature of military activities, the very presence in Azov and Transnistria and Belarus, and what we see currently being evolving in Voronezh and Smolensk, that gives us pretty much serious pretext to reconsider our military planning, to do very balanced political messaging, but at the same time to maximize our engagement with the international community, seeking attention and seeking influence, because I believe this is common mission to prevent. This is not the mission to defend, but as we consider several scenarios, we understand that any scenario which could potentially start implementing is going to be a disaster for our countries, for our stability, and I believe that it's time to maximize engagement on various fronts and to make sure that we finish 2021 with a record of Russian deployments in the vicinity of Ukraine, but we will recognize our effectiveness to prevent those deployments from actual employment. So that's the point that we advocate very strongly.
Kurt Volker.
Anatolii, Kurt Volker, distinguished fellow at Center for European Policy Analysis and former special representative for Ukraine. And first off, I just want to thank you because of all the support that you provided to me, both for transport and safety and visiting the contact line, and I think that was tremendously important. But my question for you, Ukraine is spending more than 6% of GDP on defense. I think that's salutary for any NATO country, and I also think it gives you the means to invest more. And so my question is, are you in a position to co-invest with NATO countries in Ukraine's defense? And what would be the priority areas for Ukraine where you need better equipment, better training, better technology to provide better deterrence of any further Russian incursions?
Ambassador, great question, and great to see you, and it's a pleasure to have that discussion. And I believe that Ambassador Volker just posed very much relevant and something what we advocate through multiple avenues, actually trying to solidify our capabilities and to maximize the assistance we receive. We strongly believe that momentum is right now to start moving from the satisfaction of tactical needs and start actually investing our capital into things which have fundamental nature. I just referred in my previous answer that we are concerned about possible utilization of missile complexes which could impact our civil critical infrastructure. We are very much concerned about potential amphibious operations and tactical operations emanating from Crimea. And for that very purpose, the most fundamental requirement for Ukraine, and this is our ambition, we would like to do more, and we would like to do more with Ukrainian friends. To do more in ground-based air defense, to do more in surveillance and reconnaissance, preferably airborne, to do more in cyber defense, and to do more in very much exclusive and responsive medical support. Because we learned the lesson of 14 and 15, you have to save lives of our soldiers. We have to give people confidence that if something wrong happens, they will be treated to the best of our ability, and we will return them to units or to families with a complete rehabilitation. So our proposal, and this is something that we promulgate in international community among our friends, I believe the moment started to combine our resources and to start actually using them complementary. We have potential in Ukraine, and just yesterday I attended a wonderful ceremony of a maritime sea launch opening. That's the testament to Ukrainian ability in rocket science. We started building big transport aircrafts. We have capability in precision weapons. We are pretty much advanced in electronic warfare. We started building up with good support of our US friends, the very first stage of Ukrainian fleet. Number of ships increased. We continue improving our coastal infrastructure. So the moment is coming to start bigger future. And that bigger future comes with a capital investment. So we rely on our strategic partnership with the United States. Our bond has never been as strong as it is today. But ambition is that we have to be able to prevent, not by raising rhetorics, but by being so persuasive to Russians that we have capability which could asymmetrically impact that massive force, whatever will be accumulated around Ukrainian borders.
And just as a rider to that, I mean, how well equipped are you today? Let's say if Vladimir Putin goes into Ukraine tonight, how well equipped are you to at least really give a bloody nose and make Vladimir Putin think twice about it?
Well, I believe, Robin, that we share our commitment across society very fairly. Ambassador just made the point that we allocate almost 6% of GDP for national security and defense. We have very strong and very tangible programs of security assistance with a number of nations. Our host nation, Canada, is very much strong in building institutions and capacities and in training our forces. We very much appreciate Unifier mission currently stationed in Ukraine. But all that is the package which we could not actually consider as the parity with Russians. We have to strive for superiority and for smartness, because that's the only way how we can have upper edge.
There was a question from a lady up here.
Thank you very much. Danielle Willis, Peace with Women Fellow. So we've seen reports that there's been Russian use of cyber attacks and disinformation against your forces over the last several years. Have you seen any changes or an increase in that in the recent weeks in cyber disinformation or adversarial AI? And if so, what are the implications of those?
Oh, well, thank you for that important question. For us, this is daily business. We understand that before any escalatory activities could happen over Ukrainian border, we should expect malign and subversive cyber influence over our critical infrastructure. And we have reasons to be concerned, specifically with our energy system, with our banking system, and with our government administration. Good point for us that in the military we sustained over the last 7 years to protect us. Our command and control headquarters have not been impacted by any single cyber attack, but we also understand that there is no place for complacency to make sure that we are absolutely protected. We are basically moving along the lines of the civilized world. We have created a cyber command. We will be developing cyber troops, and we are very much interested in joint cyber projects because, as you may know, Ukraine is also pretty strong in IT sector. We are very much successful in commerce. That gives us very significant national potential to utilize for cyber defense purposes. So this is legitimate concern. If this is the case, it could be one of the manifestations of escalatory activities, and we understand how much that could be disruptive for our national resilience. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question up there from the gentleman there.
Hi there. Nick Schifrin, PBS NewsHour. If I could go back to the assessment of Putin's actions. What is the assessment of the events that might precipitate the Kremlin to decide to be more adventurous? For example, some people here have suggested to me that if there's an event with China and the US, that would lead Russia to go into Ukraine. And what are the steps, diplomatic, political, that the West can take in order to prevent such an incursion? Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. This is very big issue. To start answering that, let me just remind everybody what is happening in Donbass. Russia has started issuing Russian passports. So they effectively are Russian citizens, de jure. And if you are seeking the pretext for escalatory activities and deployment of additional troops into Donbass, you already have it. You just put additional dynamic in your propaganda machine, and you tell everybody that you are coming over Ukrainian border to protect Russian citizens. Official currency or unofficial currency, which is being absolutely used in occupied part of Ukrainian Donbass, is Russian ruble. So we effectively have Russian economic subsidy to occupied territories to keep basics for the population. So that's another pretext. If you want to protect genuine economic interest of Russia, so you have Russian liquidity already in Ukraine, and you could potentially use the force to protect so-called, allegedly, Russian economic interest. You have the Black Sea, and you have in the Black Sea significant storage of energy resources. And we already have several assets of Ukraine captured by Russia after illegal annexation of Crimea. So if there is a debate about energy sources and the access and potential drilling and discovery, that's another pretext. While you have Crimea currently being heavily militarized, and we all keep talking about a number of vessels and ships and missiles, but we have not heard any single time Russia being successful with any single economic project. Nobody goes to Crimea for touristic reasons. We have not heard any single case of a good investment to Crimea. So this is what it takes for Russia to keep this concentration of forces. And the question for us is, for what? So we could also predict that Russia might be considering offensive military operations to get to the sources of fresh water across the administrative boundary from Crimea. And that goes on and on and on. And to finish that, we all should recall very recent Russian rejection of the mandate for the OSCE mission to keep control of the border. So they just rejected the presence of the OSCE civil unarmed monitors at 2 crossing points in the border, which gives Russia additional flexibility to bring in additional military hardware and supplies without any international control. So
Let's take
very long list.
Let's take 2 last questions from the audience, one here and then over here. We'll take them together. And then if there's time, I'll ask a final question, but you two might have the last word. Let's see.
Thank you. I'm Paula Dobriansky, Harvard University, Paula Dobriansky, Harvard University. My question really just follows on precisely on what you were discussing, not the buildup at the border, and you mentioned before about Crimea and the situation, but the Donbass. I'm curious from where you're sitting, is there still some kind of role, a diplomatic role? We've seen that Minsk has failed, Normandy, then it was called, and nothing has been really achieved. It just has not only kept its status quo, but even as you just described, worsened it. What would you like to see to provide a stronger foundation, maybe militarily, but having also a diplomatic framework and venue that really could make some traction or have some traction?
We'll just take this other question as well, and then we'll do them both together.
Suat Kiniklioglu, I'm a former member of the Turkish Parliament. Thank you for this candid conversation. I really enjoy it. My question is about the drone program with Turkey. How effective are they in deterring potential Russian aggression? And are you concerned that the Russian pressure on Ankara might prevent Turkey to further to continue this cooperation? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for both questions, and I'll start with the question posed by Madam. That is a great one. I spent my time in Donbass being deployed in 16-17, so autumn, winter of 16, and spring of 17. This is the moment when I met first time with Ambassador Volker. And I have seen various successes and challenges of diplomatic efforts along the contact line, trying to keep the situation under control, to avoid destabilization, and at the same time give a good chance for peaceful resolution. Very simply, I'm convinced that we should always try, to the best of our ability, to have diplomacy in play. Because if we don't have diplomacy in play, we are talking about purely military confrontation, and it will be difficult to sustain even the minimum tempo of political talk and hopeful, peaceful political resolution. If you ask me what we would like to have, we already have had several initiatives which unfortunately have not been materialized so far, and we're talking about peacekeeping, we're talking about reinforced OSCE, we're talking about robust control of that part of the border which Ukraine cannot control as the government. And with all that, I believe if the unity of vision is here, we should revert again to the consideration of potential strong, reinforced diplomatic activities which are directed towards the occupation of Crimea and the stabilization at the first place of the occupied part of Donbass, and then implementation of normal elections under the supervision of international monitors. I'm sure everybody knows that we in Ukraine try to influence that as much as we can. In the summer we launched the Crimean platform. We had big summit in Kiev, 45 foreign delegations came over, and everybody actually were unanimous that Crimea is Ukraine, and we have to reinforce our politics and diplomacy to make sure that Russia reverts its illegal occupation and start actually obeying in the area of international law. So pretty much in favor, but diplomacy must be reinforced. And that reinforcement should ideally come with a peacekeeping force which could exercise the mission effectively, because unarmed civilians in the area of operation, not that much pretty people could do. To our good friends in Ankara, we hugely appreciate partnership with Turkey. In our national security strategy, Turkey is our strategic partner. We would like to do more. We are not afraid of any pressure or any influence of Russian Federation potentially to Ankara, because we believe that Turkey is strong and absolutely sovereign nation, which continuously and unwaveringly support Ukraine politically, economically, diplomatically, and militarily. We have extensive program of defense partnership, which we would like to develop. And the recent case of our project for UAVs is the example of what I was trying to articulate to the audience. That's the smart solution. That's the technological platform that allows us to deter effectively, not by quantity, by quality. So best regards to our Turkish friends, and we will be doing much more, and we look forward pretty much optimistically how much we will be doing specifically for the Black Sea. There is a huge appetite in Kyiv to reinvigorate maritime naval cooperation with all interested partners, but Russia. We understand your sovereign position that we have to be very much balanced and very much careful with the security situation in the Black Sea, not breaking things very heavily. But our proposal is very simple, in fact. We are suggesting that we start actually doing de jure what we already do de facto. We should start actually institutionalizing our consultations on the highest level. We should be having forces on high readiness to do emergency response, search and rescue. We would be happy to share logistics, and we would be happy to combine resources just to make sure that our maritime naval cooperation represents another good case of defense partnership between Ukraine and Turkey. But teşekkür ederim very much sincerely.
Well, Mr. Petrenko, I told you that you'd be amongst friends here, and you are now part of a global network of people and organizations that support our core mission to strengthen strategic cooperation among the world's democracies, of which your country is one. Please feel part of that network now. Make use of it. And ladies and gentlemen, thank the Deputy Minister of Ukraine for his remarks today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Today's program. Please join the pre-dinner reception in the Via Rail Station.